Did you know that lack of responding to a name is a possible sign of autism? But did you also know that there is a way to teach response to name to a child? Today we are diving in deep on, whether you're a parent or professional, how to teach a child to respond to his or her name so that they can follow directions and be a part of the conversation. So when my son Lucas was a toddler, he didn't seem to be responding to his name well between the ages of 1 and 2. It was hard to get Lucas's attention, and since he was also delayed in speech, the doctor suggested that we start speech therapy, and before we did that we needed to rule out hearing loss. I really didn't think that Lucas had a hearing loss, though, because every night, if the TV was on and Lucas was in another room, the jingle for the Pennsylvania lottery, it goes like Pennsylvania lottery. And when he would hear that, he would run around the corner to watch the balls being in the bin to pick a winner. So he also would do the same thing if Barney was on TV and he would hear it from another room. So I was skeptical. Then when we started ABA therapy, when Lucas was a little over the age of 3, he was diagnosed the day before he was 3. So it took a couple months to get things straightened out and therapy in place. So I remember the day the therapist consultant came, and she said we had like this big day one where she was in the room, and my husband, myself, Lucas, my parents, I think the 3 therapists that were going to work with him were all there. So it was a big group, maybe 8 people. And a little bit into it, maybe an hour into the day, she looked at us and she said, okay, here's the first tip. Everybody's going to need to stop saying Lucas's name. You're calling him over. Lucas, come over. Lucas, touch your head. Oh yeah, he can do that. Lucas, touch your toes. She said, Lucas is the only one in the room. He's not responding well to any kind of a direction, and adding his name is not helping the situation. So years later, I became a behavior analyst, and response to name is something that I've worked on with hundreds, if not thousands, of kids. According to Autism Speaks, and we can link an article in the show notes, little to no response to name by 12 months of age is actually a hallmark sign of autism early on. We can link that, like I said, in the show notes, as well as this other article from Baby Center. And the Baby Center article shows that many typically developing babies start recognizing and responding to their own name even earlier than 12 months. They are stating at 6 or 7 months of age. So if your child isn't naturally responding to their name well, and it doesn't mean it's autism. In my experience, it could be, it could be hearing loss, so you definitely want to rule that out. It could be early signs of ADHD, early signs of global developmental delay, and other things. And it could just be a language delay and a child who's heavily focused on doing what they want to do. So don't freak out if your child's not responding to their name. But I do believe that if a child is not responding to their name every time, or 80% or 90%, we will be able to teach them in many cases. So the Baby Center article also mentions the importance of paying attention to signs of hearing loss. So if they're not responding to their name, you could do little experiments on your own, in addition to bringing this up to the pediatrician and getting an audiology testing scheduled. But you can do little homemade tests, such as playing TV kind of loud when they're in the other room for things that that they would like. Getting in back of them and shaking a tambourine or clapping loudly to see if they respond. And, that doesn't take the place, though, of official audiology testing. They could be responding to claps or tambourines, but missing subtle sounds. One ear could be more affected. So you definitely want to reach out to your pediatrician and ask for a hearing evaluation by a professional audiologist too. So as we said, response to name is important. It could be an early sign of autism. And it's important to teach as early as possible for a number of reasons. One being safety. Most kids, even if they're very little, if they're darting towards a street and you say, Johnny, stop, when they're running towards the street, or they're trying to, grab at the stove or grab something fragile, most typically developing kids will respond to their name being called and the command that you're giving. But kids with autism or signs of autism or severe speech delays that don't understand language aren't going to have that same response. Over the years, I developed a very simple 3-step approach to teaching a child to respond to his or her name. And we even have a video blog on YouTube with, I don't know how many views, but hundreds of thousands, I think. So we can link that in the show notes as well if you want a really brief synopsis of this approach. So the first tip is just like our consultant who came that first day way back in 1999 said, stop using a child's name so much. Don't use your child's name when placing demands, saying no, or in a negative way, because that will further unpair the name. Most of us don't realize how many times we are saying, Dennis, no. Sammy, put your shoes on. Johnny, throw this in the trash. When we're constantly using a child's name, even for commands at a table, like the professionals out there, Johnny, touch your head. Johnny, touch your nose. Johnny, clap your hands. Obviously, the name of Johnny is just and not helpful at all. When we do this, when we pair the names with demands, saying no, or unpleasant things, we actually are making their name aversive, and they're more likely not to respond. Thus, the child will tune us out whenever they hear their name. Of course, we usually can't go the whole day without asking our child to do something, but I recommend leaving their name out of the demands as much as possible. So that's a big step, and you might want to do that and really keep an eye on how much you, your spouse, your other kids are using the child's name, and really do an intervention like, okay, the next 3 days, we're going to not use Tyler's name. We're going to just, try all of us to stop using their child's name. So keep their name out of it when you're saying, give me the remote. Just say, give me the remote instead of Johnny, give me the remote. Make sure everyone in the child's environment is on the same page with this. So this is a big one, and that might take a couple days to get everybody to reduce the child's name use. Then once you do that, we want to go with step number 2 as we continue step number 1. So step number 2 is pairing or repairing the child's name with reinforcement, something they like. When you do use their name, we want it to be in a very positive way. So one idea that we've used with Lucas and other kids is to get behind them or to the side as they're playing a game or doing something on their own. And you might get Bubbles already ready, and say the child's name. And as soon as they look, blow Bubbles. And then you can say Bubbles. So it might even, for some kids, involve a little tap on their shoulder. Johnny, Bubbles. If they're on a swing and they love swings, push. Johnny's swinging. Push. So you don't have to say like a whole sentence with their name, but it's important to remember that any behavior that's reinforced will increase. So if you're only using your child's name with very pleasant activities, then they are going to be more likely to respond to their name. So you don't want to just gather Bubbles. You want to gather fun things, several reinforcers. You want to get close to the child, either behind them or catty corner behind them, and get your stuff already ready so that you can deliver the reinforcement as soon as the name is called and as soon as the child turns. So sometimes, like I said, it might involve a tap, the name at the same time as the tap on the shoulder. Johnny, look, Bubbles, and then blow. And edibles, whatever. And we might need to do this 5 or 10 trials at a time with different things. Then you might have to have a minute break where you're playing with the child. Then you lose your child's attention again. They're fixated on something in front of them. Again, maybe this time without a tap on the shoulder. Johnny! And blow the Bubbles. So we can't fade out the distance. We can't fade out the tap too quickly. We have to see how the child's going to respond. But in step number 2, when you are pairing the child's name, make sure you are within arm's distance of the child. Make sure you're not just doing one trial a day and then moving on. You're going to have to get different scenarios where, the child wants juice and he's waiting for juice, but now he's looking down at his iPad. And you might not even be behind him, but he's not paying attention. And you could say, Johnny, juice. And he looks up. And that could be a trial for the day. But he's going to need some trials, some teaching trials. But the mistake people make is they call from a distance. Johnny, get your shoes. It's like, even get your shoes alone. Try to be with the child as much as possible before you give the demand so that if they don't move, you can help them understand it, maybe with a gesture or gentle prompting. Okay, so that is step number 1 is to stop using the child's name repetitively. Step number 2 is to pair the child's name using Bubbles, small pieces of edibles, snacks, toys, preferred drinks, pushes on swings, wind-up toys, whatever the child really loves. You can, even a game of tag or a game of hide and seek. If the child loves something, think about ways that you can get them not attending to you, use the child's name, and then deliver something really powerful. So that is step number 2, and make sure that you systematically fade out your distance because, by week 1 or by day 3, you might be able to be not within arm's distance. You may be able to be, a foot or 2 away. You may, but we want the child to be responding, like looking, attending 80% of the time, 90% of the time before you go fading back and doing 10 trials with at a distance or with lower volume or with less reinforcement. And for professionals out there, there are data sheets, and there's a lot of things you can do to systematically fade out prompting and fade out reinforcement for this really, really critical skill. So with this procedure, with this pairing procedure of the name, your child will learn that good things happen when they respond to their name. And like I said, everyone in the child's environment needs to be on board for the best results. This means at home, at school, and therapy. And step number 3 is and this isn't an absolute step, but I do recommend, even for parents, that you take data and be patient. Just like if you were trying to lose weight or something like that, if you're really trying to work on this very critical skill, you can even take a piece of loose leaf and say you have bubbles and juice and whatever, and you're, tapping him on the shoulder 3 trials, not tapping, he's responding. And then you're moving away at some point 3 days later. It might take data, and it might take 10 to 20 trials a day and taking data on these actual procedures. Maybe you'll get lucky and you can just reduce the child's name and pair up the child's name without data. And if that's you, great. But don't think, oh, this isn't going to work for my child. This doesn't work for my child. He is definitely, even if the child has autism, they can still learn to respond to their name. And it's important that we teach them for safety reasons. Children who do not respond to their name likely do not understand receptively what you're saying. They touch your toes or get your shoes. They're not trying to be disobedient, or they just don't understand. They need more prompting. Whenever you have a problem behavior, and not responding to directions is a problem behavior in some respects. So whenever you have a problem, the demands are too high and or reinforcement is too low. So we're going to make sure we're close to the child, make sure we have high rates of reinforcement, even without their name, teaching them to respond to directions, or even look up when you're calling just their name without a direction is where to start. It is a deeper language comprehension issue too, the failure to follow directions. So it's important you consider learning more, reading my book, joining our online course and community, where we really teach you how to teach complex language skills, reduce problem behaviors, and teach functional self-help skills all at the same time as quickly as possible. As most of you know, I do not recommend punishing or disciplining our kids for lack of response to their name, or really for anything. If the child is having problem behaviors, it's most likely, like I said, demands are too high and reinforcement's too low. Yelling at a child who did not understand the first instruction will obviously not help them learn the skill that you want them to learn, or screaming their name is not helpful. We need to systematically use their name and systematically teach them to respond to their name. So in summary, failure to respond to your name can be a sign of autism, but there are 3 steps to teach this skill to respond to their name. Number 1, stop using your child or client's name so much, especially with demands or saying stop or no. Number 2, pair the child's name with high levels of reinforcement. And step 3, take data and be patient. So for best results, continue to learn, because this is just one sliver of a skill and there's so much more that you can learn. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would love a comment, share it with somebody who might benefit, and I'll see you right here, same time next week.